My mother-in-law stood before 50 guests at my baby shower and handed me a thick envelope. She announced it contained 47 reasons her son should divorce me. The room erupted in laughter, and my husband joined in. I did not. I skipped to reason number 23 and read it aloud. The laughter died instantly. She froze because she had not just insulted me, she had documented her own crime. My name is Savannah Phillips. I am 33 years old, and I am 7 months pregnant with a daughter who is currently performing gymnastics against my bladder. I live in Ridgecrest, Colorado, a town where the elevation is high enough to make you lightheaded and the social expectations are rigid enough to make you suffocate. For the past 2 years, I have been attempting to graft myself onto the family tree of the Grants. They are a clan that prides itself on being tight-knit, the kind of family that appears in local lifestyle magazines wearing matching cable-knit sweaters while laughing at a joke that nobody outside their gene pool would understand. Today was supposed to be my day. It was my baby shower. The living room of my mother-in-law, Lorraine Grant, looked like a Pinterest board had exploded and coated everything in a suffocating layer of beige. The theme was golden hour. There were cream-colored balloons, gold-leafed napkins, and a 3-tiered cake that looked too architectural to be edible. It was beautiful. It was flawless. It was also completely devoid of my input. I had asked for sage green and perhaps a few wildflowers. Lorraine had told me that green looked muddy in photographs and that I would thank her later. I sat in a velvet armchair that had been positioned in the center of the room like a throne for a sacrifice. There were nearly 50 people packed into the sunken living room. They were cousins, neighbors, and colleagues of my husband, Adrian. I knew perhaps 5 of them well enough to call them friends. The rest were spectators. Lorraine stood by the fireplace. She held a crystal champagne flute in one hand and a thick white envelope in the other. She tapped the glass with a silver spoon. The sound was sharp and piercing, slicing through the low hum of conversation. The room went silent. Lorraine had that effect on people. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet 2, but she occupied space like a skyscraper. She smiled, and her eyes crinkled at the corners. But the warmth never actually reached the irises. They remained cool and detached, assessing everything. "Attention, everyone," Lorraine cooed. Her voice was sweet, dripping with the kind of affection that usually precedes a bite. "Before we open the gifts, which I am sure are lovely, I have a little something for the mother-to-be, a bit of wisdom passed down." Adrian was standing near the patio doors, holding a beer. He caught my eye and winked. He looked relaxed. He looked like he thought this was just another one of his mother's eccentric traditions. He had the Grant jawline and the Grant charm, the kind that made you want to forgive him before he even apologized. He had spent his whole life managing Lorraine, laughing off her barbs, telling me that she meant well and that her bite was not as bad as her bark. Lorraine walked over to me. Her heels clicked rhythmically on the hardwood floor. She extended the envelope. It was heavy. "I have been thinking a lot about the future," Lorraine said, turning to address the room while still holding the envelope out to me. "Marriage is hard work. Raising a child is harder. And sometimes we need radical honesty to survive. So, I made a list. I took the envelope. My fingers felt numb. 47 reasons, Lorraine announced, her voice pitching up theatrically. 47 reasons my son should divorce you." For a split second, I thought I had misheard her. The air in the room seemed to vanish. Then, a ripple of laughter started near the back and surged forward. It was a wave of relief. The guests thought it was a roast. They thought it was a comedy bit, a dark, dry joke that fit the Grant family's cynical sense of humor. I looked at Adrian. He was laughing. He was leaning against the doorframe, shaking his head with a grin that said, "Oh, Mom, you are too much." He was not looking at me. He was looking at his mother, the star of the show. He was standing in the safety of the audience, leaving me alone on the stage. I did not laugh. I looked down at the envelope in my hands. It was not a gag gift. It was sealed with wax. I broke the seal. Inside, there were 4 sheets of heavy cotton blend paper. I unfolded them. The text was single-spaced. It was typed in Times New Roman, size 12 font. It looked like a legal deposition. It looked like a performance improvement plan from a corporate human resources department. "Read a few." "Savannah," someone shouted from the back. It was Aunt Beverly, I think, trying to keep the momentum going. "Let's hear what she did." Lorraine beamed. "Go on, dear. We are all family here. It is good to laugh at our flaws." My throat felt like it was lined with sandpaper. I looked at the top of the list. Reason number 1. She refuses to iron the bed sheets, resulting in a chaotic sleeping environment. I read it aloud. The room roared with laughter. It was relatable. It was petty. It was classic mother-in-law material. "Guilty," I said, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack my face. I needed to survive this. I needed to get through the next hour without crying in front of these people. I scanned down the list. Reason number 4. She insists on buying store-brand pasta sauce instead of making it from scratch. Reason number 9. She is overly independent and does not ask for advice, which signifies a lack of respect for elders. The laughter grew louder with each item. It was a cacophony of validation for Lorraine. She stood there with her hands clasped, nodding benevolently, basking in the adoration of her court. She was the witty matriarch, and I was the endearing but flawed newcomer who needed to be molded. Adrian was still smiling. He caught my eye and mouthed, "It's funny." I looked back down at the paper. I wanted to skim to the end, to get this over with. My eyes moved rapidly over the paragraphs. Reason number 12, reason number 15, and then I stopped. My eyes locked on reason number 23. The noise of the party, the clinking of glasses. The laughter. The jazz music playing softly in the background seemed to fade into a dull buzz, like static on a dead radio channel. I read the sentence again, then a third time. My heart hammered against my ribs. A frantic, wet thudding, the baby kicked, a sharp jab against my side, grounding me. This was not a joke. This was not a roast. The text in reason number 23 was precise. It was specific. It contained information that nobody outside of a bank vault should know. It contained information that I did not even know until 3 seconds ago. But Lorraine knew, and in her arrogance, in her absolute certainty that she was untouchable and that I was an oblivious fool. She had written it down. She had typed it out, printed it, and handed it to me in front of 50 witnesses. I felt a strange sensation wash over me. The humiliation evaporated. The fear vanished. In their place, a cold, crystal-clear rage settled in my chest. It was freezing and sharp. I looked up. Lorraine was watching me, her eyebrows raised in mock anticipation. "Is something wrong?" "Savannah," she asked. "Is that one too close to home?" The room quieted down. Sensing a shift in the energy, they were waiting for the punchline. "No," I said. My voice was steady. It did not sound like my voice. It sounded like the voice of a woman who had just found the weapon she needed to win a war. "This one is actually quite interesting. Lorraine, do you mind if I read it?" Lorraine waved her hand dismissively. "By all means, let us hear it." She thought she was winning. She thought this was the part where I crumbled, where I admitted I was a bad wife who was bad with money. She had no idea she had just walked onto a landmine. I looked at Adrian. He was still smiling, but the smile was faltering at the edges. He looked confused. He saw something in my face that he had never seen before. I turned back to the paper. I lifted it higher so my voice would project. "Reason number 23, I said clearly. I paused. I wanted to make sure everyone heard this. Reason number 23. She is so financially incompetent that she remains completely unaware when family members utilize her digital identity to secure bridge loans, proving she is not attentive enough to manage the Grant family assets. I finished reading. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Lorraine's smile did not fade. It simply fell off her face. Her skin turned the color of the ash in the fireplace. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. It was as if someone had reached into the room and vacuumed out all the oxygen. Adrian pushed himself off the doorframe, his beer bottle lowered to his side. "Savannah, what did that say?" I did not look at him. I kept my eyes locked on Lorraine. "It says," I continued, my voice ringing in the dead silence, "that you think I am unfit to be a wife because I did not notice you used my name to take out a loan." The shock in the room was palpable. It was a physical thing, heavy and suffocating. The guests looked from me to Lorraine and back again. They were trying to process the shift from comedy to felony. Lorraine took a step forward. Her hand reached out, twitching. "That is not out of context. It is a joke. Give me that paper." "No," I said. I folded the paper and slid it under my thigh. Sitting firmly on it, "I think I will keep it. It was a gift. After all." Somewhere in the kitchen, a timer dinged, cheerful and oblivious. In the living room, a cousin I barely knew dropped her wine glass. It hit the hardwood floor and shattered. The sound was like a gunshot. Red wine splashed across the pristine cream rug, looking disturbingly like blood. Nobody moved to clean it up. Adrian walked into the center of the room. He looked at his mother. "Mom, why would you write that?" Lorraine stammered. The composure that had defined her for decades was dissolving before our eyes. "It was a metaphor. Adrian, it is about trust. It is about how she does not pay attention to details. I was trying to help her understand her responsibilities." "You put it in writing," I said. Lorraine glared at me. The mask was gone now. There was pure venom in her eyes. "You are twisting this. You always twist everything. You are ruining your own party." "I am not the one who wrote a confession and called it a party game," I replied. The guests were beginning to shift uncomfortably. Some were looking for their purses, others were staring at their shoes. The illusion of the perfect Grant family had not just cracked, it had exploded. Lorraine straightened her spine. She tried to summon the imperious matriarch again, but her voice shook. "You are being hysterical. Savannah, it is the hormones. Give me the list, and we can discuss this privately like civilized people." She took another step toward me. I placed my hand on my stomach, feeling the reassuring weight of my daughter. I thought about the credit check I would run tomorrow. I thought about the forensic audit I would demand. I thought about the fact that my mother-in-law had just admitted to identity theft because she was so blinded by her own ego that she thought she could frame it as my failure. "I am not hysterical." "Lorraine," I said softly. I stood up. My legs were shaking, but I locked my knees. I looked her dead in the eye. "And we will not be discussing this privately." I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I held it up. The screen was black, but the weight of it felt significant. "Because you did not just write a list of insults," I said. "You wrote a list of evidence, and I have the paperwork to match." Lorraine looked at my phone, then at the envelope under my arm. The color drained from her face completely, leaving her looking old and terrified. "Why?" she whispered. And for the first time, she did not sound like the Queen of Ridgecrest. She sounded like a woman who realized she had just handed the executioner an axe. "Why would you do this now?" "I didn't," I said. "You did. You just handed me 47 reasons. I only needed one. To understand the explosion in the living room, you have to rewind the tape. You have to go back exactly 4 weeks to a Tuesday night when the silence in my own house started to feel heavy. It was 10 o'clock at night. I was lying on our beige sectional sofa, my ankles propped up on 3 pillows. At 6 months pregnant, my feet had decided to stage a mutiny. Swelling to a size that made my regular shoes look like torture devices, my lower back was throbbing with a dull, rhythmic ache that no amount of prenatal yoga seemed to fix. I was tired, I was hormonal, and I was listening to my husband, Adrian, negotiate with a terrorist on speakerphone. The terrorist was his mother. Lorraine Grant was on the other end of the line, her voice filling our living room with that crisp, authoritative cadence she used when she was organizing a charity gala or, apparently, restructuring her son's life. She did not sound like a grandmother planning a party. She sounded like a CEO merging 2 hostile corporations. "I have secured the venue," Lorraine announced. There was no question in her tone, only a statement of fact. We are doing it at the house. The club was available, but frankly, the lighting in the chaotic ballroom is terrible for midday photos. My living room has that Western exposure. It is decided. Adrian sat in the armchair opposite me, rubbing his temples. He looked exhausted, the blue light from his phone casting long shadows under his eyes. Mom, we talked about this. Savannah and I were thinking about something low-key, maybe just a backyard thing, burgers and beer, co-ed, casual. I nodded vigorously from the couch, giving him a thumbs up. I did not want a production. I wanted to eat potato salad in comfortable pants. Lorraine let out a small, sharp laugh. It was a sound like glass breaking in a dishwasher. Adrian, darling, do not be absurd, she said. This is not a tailgate party. This is a celebration of the Grant legacy. You cannot welcome the first grandchild with paper plates and store-bought buns. I have already spoken to the caterer. We are going with the golden hour theme. It is elegant. It is timeless. Beiges, creams, and golds. Very architectural. I sat up, ignoring the protest of my lower back. Lorraine, I called out toward the phone. Hi, it is Savannah. That sounds lovely. Really, but I honestly just want to relax. I don't think I have the energy for a formal event. Can we just keep it simple? There was a pause on the line. It lasted just long enough to make me feel like I had interrupted a church sermon. Oh, Savannah, Lorraine said. Her voice shifted gears. It became softer, slower. The way one speaks to a slow child or a nervous pet. I understand that you are tired. Pregnancy takes a toll, especially when you are not used to expectations. But you have to understand, dear, this isn't just about you. It is about the family. And frankly, you have never organized a social event of this caliber. Have you? I stiffened. I have planned plenty of parties. Lorraine? Birthday parties in a rented park pavilion do not count. Sweetheart, she cut in smoothly. I know your mother did the best she could with what she had after your father left. But let's be honest, you did not grow up knowing how to host. You were in survival mode. I admire that grit. I really do. But now you are a Grant. We do not do survival mode. We do excellence. Let me handle the heavy lifting. You just show up and glow. It was a masterclass in verbal jujitsu. She had managed to insult my upbringing, pity my single mother, and dismiss my competence all while pretending to do me a favor. She wielded my history like a weapon wrapped in velvet. I looked at Adrian, waiting for him to step in, waiting for him to say, Hey, don't talk about her family like that. Adrian shifted in his seat. She is just trying to help, Sav, he mouthed to me, covering the microphone for a second, then back to the phone. Okay, Mom, if you want to handle it. Fine, but keep the guest list tight. Just close friends and family. Of course, Lorraine purred. Speaking of friends, I ran into the Hearts at the club yesterday. They were asking about you. I put them on the list. My stomach dropped. The Hearts? That meant Sloane Hart. Sloane was Adrian's ex-girlfriend from college. She was a corporate lawyer with perfect hair, a pedigree that matched the Grants, and a history with my husband that Lorraine never missed an opportunity to mention. Sloane was the daughter Lorraine wished she had. I was the daughter-in-law she tolerated. Mom, Adrian said, his voice tightening. I don't think inviting Sloane is a good idea. Don't be childish. Adrian, Lorraine snapped. The Hearts are practically family. Sloane is a mature adult. She is very happy for you. It would be incredibly rude to exclude them just because of ancient history. Unless, of course, Savannah is too insecure to handle another woman in the room. I felt the blood rush to my face. It was a trap. If I said no, I was the jealous, insecure wife. If I said yes, I had to spend my baby shower watching my mother-in-law fawn over my husband's ex. I looked at Adrian again. He looked trapped. He looked like a man trying to defuse a bomb by hugging it. It's fine, I said, my voice flat. Invite her. I don't care. See, Lorraine chirped. Savannah is fine with it. She is being reasonable. I will send over the itinerary next week. Good night, loves. The line went dead. The room fell silent again, but the heavy feeling remained. Adrian set the phone down and exhaled a long breath. He walked over to the sofa and sat by my feet, reaching out to rub my swollen ankle. His hands were warm and gentle. He was a good man. I knew he loved me, but in that moment, I looked at him and saw something else. "She is unbelievable," I whispered. "She is just a lot," Adrian said, focusing intently on my ankle. "You know how she is. She gets a vision in her head and she steams ahead. She just wants it to be perfect for us. She insulted my mother. Adrian, she invited your ex-girlfriend. She didn't mean it like that," he said automatically. It was a reflex, a pre-recorded message installed in his brain since childhood. "And Sloane is just a friend now. Mom is right. It would be awkward to snub the Hearts. We see them at Christmas. It is just politics. Sav, just let her have her party. It is easier than fighting her." It is easier than fighting her. That was the Grant family motto. Peace at any price, even if the price was my dignity. 2 days later, we were at the Grant estate for the mandatory Sunday dinner. The house was imposing, a sprawling brick colonial that smelled of lemon polish and old money. We sat in the formal dining room, the 6 of us, Lorraine, her quiet husband Robert, who mostly communicated in nods, Adrian, me, Adrian's younger sister Tessa, and the ghost of expectations past. I was wearing a gray maternity tunic and black leggings. It was the only outfit that didn't make me feel like a sausage casing. I had spent 20 minutes trying to do my hair, but the humidity had turned it into a frizz halo. Lorraine sat at the head of the table, cutting her roast beef with surgical precision. She was wearing a structured silk blouse that probably cost more than my first car. "So," Lorraine said, not looking up from her plate, "I see we have opted for the comfortable look tonight. Savannah." I paused with my fork halfway to my mouth. "It is hard to fit into zippers right now, Lorraine." "I understand," she said, finally looking at me. Her gaze swept over my oversized tunic like a searchlight looking for contraband. "But you know, pregnancy is not an excuse to let standards slide completely. When I was carrying Adrian, I wore heels until the 8th month. It is important to maintain a certain image, for your husband's sake. Men are visual creatures. Dear, you don't want to become just the mother." The table went silent. Robert took a long sip of wine. Adrian chewed his beef vigorously, staring at the centerpiece. "I think she looks beautiful," Adrian said. But his voice was low. It wasn't a defense. It was a deflection. He didn't look at his mother when he said it. He looked at the table. I felt a flash of heat behind my eyes. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the roast beef across the table. But I didn't. I had learned, like Adrian, that reacting only gave her fuel. Then, I felt eyes on me. I looked across the table. Tessa was watching me. Tessa Grant was 26. The black sheep of the family, mostly because she worked at a credit union instead of a law firm and refused to straighten her curly hair. She usually stayed out of the line of fire, keeping her head down during these dinners. But tonight, she wasn't looking at her plate. She was looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite place. It wasn't pity, it was anxiety. She caught my eye, then flicked her gaze toward the kitchen door. A subtle signal. 10 minutes later, I excused myself to use the restroom. As I walked past the kitchen, Tessa was there, pouring a glass of water. She checked the hallway to make sure we were alone. "Savannah," she whispered. Her voice was tight. "Hey, Tess, good dinner." "Huh?" I said sarcastically. She didn't smile. She moved closer, dropping her voice to a bare murmur. "I need to talk to you. Not here. Not with them around." "What is going on?" I asked, frowning. "Can you meet me tomorrow?" "Lunch break. There is a coffee shop near your office. The one on 4th Street. "Sure, but why is everything okay?" Tessa looked back toward the dining room, where the murmur of her mother's voice was drifting down the hall. She looked terrified. "It is about money," she whispered. "I saw something at work, on the system. I shouldn't be telling you this. I could get fired. But you need to see it. See what Adrian and I have joint accounts. I see everything. Tessa shook her head. Her eyes were wide and serious. No, you don't. You really don't. Footsteps clicked in the hallway. Tessa immediately pulled back, pasting a fake smile on her face as Lorraine appeared around the corner. There you two are, Lorraine said, her eyes narrowing slightly as she assessed the distance between us. Plotting against the Empire. Just getting water. Mom, Tessa said, her voice shaking slightly. She hurried past Lorraine and back to the dining room. Lorraine turned to me. She reached out and patted my arm. Her hand was cold. Don't take the clothes comment to heart. Dear, I am only trying to help you. Someone has to teach you how to be a Grant. Adrian certainly won't. He is too soft. He loves you too much to tell you when you are embarrassing yourself. She smiled, squeezed my arm a little too hard, and walked away. I stood in the kitchen for a long moment. My heart was thumping in my ears. I thought about Tessa's face. It is about money. I walked back into the dining room. Adrian looked up and smiled at me. It was a genuine smile. He loved me. I knew that. He was kind. He was hardworking, and he was excited to be a father. But as he sat there, nodding along to whatever his mother was saying, I realized the terrifying truth. He was not just a peacekeeper. He was a hostage who had fallen in love with his captor. He had been trained since birth to prioritize his mother's comfort over reality. If Lorraine said the sky was green, Adrian would squint until he saw a shade of lime just to avoid an argument. And if Lorraine had done something with money, something bad enough to make his sister risk her job to warn me, Adrian would be the last person to see it. I sat down and picked up my fork. The roast beef was cold. Everything okay? Adrian whispered, touching my knee under the table. Fine, I lied. I looked at Lorraine at the head of the table. She was laughing at her own joke, her pearls gleaming in the chandelier light. She looked untouchable. She looked like a woman who controlled the board, the pieces, and the rules of the game. But she didn't know that the pawn she had been mocking for 2 years had just been given a clue. I took a bite of the cold beef. It tasted like ash, but I swallowed it anyway. Tomorrow, I would meet Tessa. Tomorrow, I would find out what money meant, and looking at my husband's oblivious, smiling face, I realized that whatever was coming, I was going to have to face it alone. The coffee shop on 4th Street smelled of burnt espresso and wet raincoats. It was raining, a gray, miserable drizzle that slicked the streets of Ridgecrest and made the inside of the cafe feel steamy and claustrophobic. I found Tessa sitting at a small table in the back corner, hidden behind a large potted fern. She was wearing her work blazer, and her curly hair was pulled back so tightly it looked painful. She had a manila folder in front of her. Her hands were resting on top of it, fingers interlocked, knuckles white. She looked like she was guarding a bomb. You came, she said as I approached. She didn't smile. You said it was about money, Tessa, I replied, sliding into the metal chair opposite her. My belly bumped the edge of the table, and I had to adjust, shifting sideways. I don't ignore warnings about money, especially not from someone who audits loans for a living. Tessa worked at Crescent Harbor Credit Union. It was a regional institution, respectable and boring, the kind of place where the Grants kept their liquid assets to support the local economy. Tessa was a senior risk analyst. Her job was to look for red flags in loan applications and transaction histories. She was good at it because she had been raised in a house where reading between the lines was a survival skill. She pushed the folder across the table. It moved heavily, the paper scraping against the laminate surface. I need you to promise me something, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. If this blows up, you didn't get it from me. I could lose my license. I could go to jail for breaching privacy laws. Tessa, you are scaring me. Open it. I flipped the cover open. Inside was a stack of printouts, spreadsheets, transaction logs, and a photocopy of a digital loan agreement. I scanned the first page. It was a loan approval document for a secured line of credit. The amount was $50,000. The collateral was a joint investment portfolio held in the names of Adrian Grant and Savannah Grant. I frowned. We didn't take out a line of credit. We talked about doing a small renovation on the nursery, but we decided to pay cash. We have savings. Look at the date, Tessa said. I looked. The approval date was January 10th, last week. I was at work on January 10th, I said. I didn't sign this. Turn the page. I flipped to the second sheet. It was the signature page. At the bottom, in the box marked Borrower Signature, was a digital stamp. It read, Savannah Phillips Grant, accompanied by a unique alphanumeric hash code that verified the identity via an email authentication. My stomach turned over. It wasn't the nausea of pregnancy. It was the sickening drop of violation. That is my digital signature, I said slowly, but I didn't authorize it. How did this happen? That is what I asked myself when the system flagged it for a routine address verification check, Tessa said. She pulled a sheet from the bottom of the stack. See, usually, these digital signings track the IP address of the device used to sign the document. It is a security feature to prevent fraud. The bank's system noted that the IP address for Savannah Grant did not match your usual login location in downtown Ridgecrest or your home Wi-Fi. She pointed to a string of numbers highlighted in yellow. Do you recognize that IP address? Savannah. I stared at the numbers. They meant nothing to me. No, I do, Tessa said. Her eyes were wet. I grew up on that Wi-Fi network. That IP address belongs to the router at 142 Maple Drive. The Grant estate, Lorraine's house, the noise of the coffee shop, the grinder, the indie folk music, the chatter faded away. All I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. Are you telling me, I said, my voice dangerously calm, that someone at your mother's house logged into my account and signed a $50,000 loan in my name? Not someone, Tessa corrected. Mom, it was Mom's iPad. I checked the device ID in the metadata. It is her personal tablet, the one she uses to play bridge online. I sat back, feeling the cold metal of the chair press against my spine. My mind was racing, but it wasn't panicking. Panic is for people who don't know what to do. I knew exactly what to do. I work for the Halcyon Ridge Compliance Group. My entire career is built on sniffing out corporate fraud, embezzlement, and regulatory non-compliance. I spend 40 hours a week looking for the exact kind of digital breadcrumbs Tessa had just laid out in front of me. My brain shifted gears. I wasn't a daughter-in-law anymore. I was an auditor. Okay, I said. Walk me through the mechanics. Tessa, to sign via DocuSign or Adobe Sign, you need access to the email on file to get the verification code. My email is secured. Two-factor authentication is on. Is your recovery email Adrian's account? Tessa asked. I paused. Yes, we set it up that way years ago when we were dating, in case I got locked out. And does Mom have access to Adrian's email? The realization hit me like a physical slap. Adrian didn't have secrets from his mother. He probably had her listed as a recovery contact on his own accounts, or worse. She had his passwords from when he was in college, and he had never changed them because who hacks a Gmail account? She reset my password, I realized, speaking the steps aloud as I put them together. She triggered a password reset on my bank login. The code went to my email. She accessed my email by resetting that password using Adrian's account as the recovery. She logged in, authorized the loan, signed the document, and then what? She must have deleted the notification emails. She archived them, Tessa said. I cannot see your email, obviously, but that is what she does. She never deletes anything permanently. She just hides it. She thinks she is smarter than the system. Where did the money go? I asked. $50,000 doesn't just vanish. Tessa pointed to the last page. It was wired out immediately upon approval to a corporate account. I looked at the beneficiary name. Juniper Row Holdings, LLC. Juniper Row, I repeated. It sounds like a scented candle shop. It is a shell, Tessa said. I looked it up in the state registry. Incorporated 3 months ago. The registered agent is a lawyer in Delaware. No physical office, just a P.O. box. I stared at the name. Juniper Row. Juniper. Lorraine's favorite gin was juniper-based. It was arrogant. It was lazy. It was exactly the kind of name you pick when you think nobody will ever dare to check your work. Why? I asked. Why would she do this? Adrian and I aren't destitute. If she needed money, she has millions. If she wanted us to have money, she could just write a check. Tessa shook her head. She took a sip of her cold coffee, her hand trembling. It isn't about the money, Savannah. It is about leverage. Think about it. She opens a debt in your name, a debt you don't know about. Eventually, you miss a payment because you don't know it exists. Your credit score tanks. Or maybe she uses the money to buy something for the baby through this shell company, and then later claims you embezzled family funds to buy it. It is a setup. She is building a file on you. A file. My mind flashed back to the way Lorraine looked at me during dinners, the way she cataloged my flaws. She wasn't just being mean. She was building a case. She was manufacturing a narrative where I was financially irresponsible, possibly criminal, and definitely unfit to manage the Grant family legacy, and she was using my own digital identity to do it. Does Adrian know? I asked. This was the question that mattered. This was the question that would decide whether I went home to a husband or a co-conspirator. Tessa hesitated. She looked down at her hands. I don't think so. You don't think so, or you know so. I don't think he knows about the loan, Tessa said. Adrian is... He is soft, Savannah. He is weak when it comes to her, but he isn't malicious. He wouldn't frame his pregnant wife for fraud. He just gives her access. He hands her the keys to the castle because he thinks she is just cleaning up. He doesn't look in the closet to see where she is burying the bodies. Ignorance is not a defense. Tessa, I said sharply, if his negligence allowed her to steal my identity, he is liable. I know. Tessa hissed, glancing around to make sure nobody was listening. That is why I am telling you, if this comes out, Adrian goes down too. The bank will flag him as high risk. He could lose his security clearance at his engineering firm. Mom is willing to burn him just to burn you. I looked at the papers again. Juniper Row Holdings. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I opened the browser and logged into the Secretary of State's business search portal. I had a subscription through my work. I punched in Juniper Row Holdings. The results loaded in 3 seconds. It was indeed a Delaware LLC, but there was a filing for a trade name attached to it, filed just 2 weeks ago. The trade name was authorized to do business as Little Darlings Interiors. Little Darlings Interiors, I read aloud. That is the company Lorraine hired to decorate the nursery, the one she insisted on using because they were exclusive. The pieces clicked together with a terrifying precision. Lorraine had taken out a loan in my name, effectively stealing $50,000 from our future, and funneled it into a shell company she controlled. Then, she was likely going to use that shell company to pay for the nursery services, essentially laundering the money back to herself or using it to pay off the vendor while keeping the debt on my head. It was brilliant. It was evil. And it was incredibly illegal. She is paying herself with my credit, I said. She is gifting us a nursery that I'm paying for, with interest, without my knowledge. And if you ever try to leave Adrian, Tessa added quietly. She pulls out the loan documents. She shows the court that you secretly took out $50,000 and funneled it to an unknown company. She paints you as a thief. She gets full custody. The air in the coffee shop felt suddenly very cold. I wasn't just dealing with a mother-in-law who criticized my cooking. I was dealing with a sociopath who was engaging in complex financial structuring to create an exit strategy for her son that involved destroying my life. I closed the folder, I slid it off the table and into my oversized tote bag. Thank you, Tessa, I said. What are you going to do? Tessa asked, her eyes wide with panic. You cannot just confront her. She will deny it. She will say you authorized it. She will destroy the evidence. I am not going to confront her, I said. Not yet. In my line of work, Tessa, we have a rule. You never let the suspect know you are watching until you have enough evidence to bury them. But the baby shower is in 4 weeks, Tessa said. She is going to be parading around like she owns you. Let her parade, I said. I stood up. My back ached. But the pain felt distant now. I felt sharpened. I felt dangerous. She thinks she is playing chess, but she just handed me the king. She left a digital footprint on a bank server. That is the one thing you cannot charm your way out of. Savannah, Tessa said, grabbing my wrist as I turned to leave. Please, be careful. She isn't just my mother. She is an institution in this town. People believe her. That is the problem with institutions, I said, looking down at my sister-in-law. They get old, they get crumbled, and they forget that the foundation is only as strong as the paperwork that holds it up. I walked out of the coffee shop and into the rain. I didn't open my umbrella. I let the cold water hit my face. I needed to wake up. I walked to my car, got in, and locked the doors. I sat there for a moment, listening to the rain drum against the roof. I pulled my phone out and opened my calendar. I scrolled back to January 10th, 2:00 p.m. dentist appointment. I had an alibi. I was in a dental chair with a drill in my mouth at the exact minute I was signing a loan document from Lorraine's living room. I started the car. I wasn't going home to cry. I was going to my office at Halcyon Ridge. I had to run a full credit report on myself. I had to pull the IP logs from my own email provider. I had to build a binder. Lorraine Grant wanted a war. She wanted to use paper and ink to destroy me. She had no idea that paper and ink were my native language. I put the car in drive and pulled out onto 4th Street. The rain was washing the streets clean, but it wouldn't wash away what I now knew. The woman I called Mom for 2 years was not family. She was a felon, and her son, my husband, was the unwitting getaway driver. I sat at the kitchen island. The granite was cold against my forearms. The house was quiet, the kind of heavy silence that precedes a tornado siren. In front of me, arranged with the precision of a surgical tray, were the documents Tessa had given me, the loan approval, the digital signature log, the screenshot of the Juniper Row Holdings registration. I heard the garage door rumble open. It was 6:30 in the evening. Adrian walked in a moment later. He looked tired but content. The look of a man who had put in a solid day at the firm and was ready to transition into the comfort of his domestic life. He loosened his tie as he walked into the kitchen, a smile already forming on his lips. "Hey, babe," he said, leaning over to kiss my forehead. "Smells good. Did you order Thai?" He didn't see the papers yet. He was looking at the takeout menu stuck to the fridge. "We need to talk," I said. My voice was flat. It lacked the usual cadence of greeting. Adrian paused, his hand halfway to the refrigerator handle. He turned to look at me, really look at me, and his smile faltered. "What is it?" he asked. "Is it the baby?" "The baby is fine," I said. "Sit down, Adrian." He pulled out the bar stool opposite me. He looked at the papers on the island, then up at my face. "What is all this work stuff?" "It is work stuff," I said. "But not mine. It is your mother's." I slid the first sheet across the granite. It was the loan agreement. "Read the amount," I said, "and then read the signature at the bottom." Adrian picked up the paper. He squinted slightly. $50,000, secured line of credit salve. "What is this? We didn't apply for this." "Keep reading." His eyes dropped to the bottom of the page. "Savannah Phillips Grant. Okay. But you didn't sign this." "No," I said. "I didn't. Look at the date. January 10th. I was getting a root canal on January 10th. I was physically incapable of signing a contract." Adrian laughed nervously. It was a short, confused sound. "Okay, so it is a mistake. The bank screwed up. Identity theft. We need to call them." "It is identity theft," I said. "But it wasn't a stranger." I slid the second sheet across. The IP address log, the device ID. The signature was executed from an iPad located at 142 Maple Drive. I said, "Your mother's house, using your mother's personal device." Adrian stared at the paper. He didn't speak for a long time. I watched his face. I watched the gears turning, the denial trying to find a foothold. He looked like a computer trying to process a command that contradicted its operating system. "Mom," he said finally, "that doesn't make sense. Why would Mom take out a loan in your name? She has plenty of money." "She moved the money to a shell company called Juniper Row," I explained, keeping my voice clinically detached, "which is doing business as Little Darling's Interiors, the company doing our nursery." Adrian blinked. "So she is paying for the nursery?" "No, Adrian," I said, leaning forward. "I am paying for the nursery, with interest. She took out debt in my name to pay herself for a gift she claims she is giving us. She is laundering money through my credit score." "There has to be an explanation," Adrian said. He stood up, pacing away from the island. Maybe she mixed up the accounts. She handles a lot of paperwork for the trust. Maybe she thought it was the joint trust account. She used my digital identity. Adrian, she reset my password. That takes intent." "I am calling her," he said. He pulled his phone out of his pocket. "Put it on speaker," I said. He dialed. It rang twice. "Hello, darling." Lorraine's voice filled the kitchen. She sounded cheerful, unburdened. "I was just looking at the floral arrangements for Saturday. The hydrangeas are exquisite." "Mom," Adrian said. His voice was tight. "I am looking at a loan document for $50,000. In Savannah's name." There was a pause on the other end. It lasted exactly 2 seconds. "Oh," Lorraine said. Her tone didn't drop. It didn't waver. It just shifted from cheerful to mildly bored. "You saw that I meant to tell you. It is just a bridge loan, Adrian. Nothing to panic about." "A bridge loan," Adrian repeated. "Mom, it is in Savannah's name. She didn't sign it." "Well, obviously," Lorraine said, letting out a small sigh. "Savannah is in no condition to be running around signing papers. She is nesting. I just handled the administrative side of things to keep the project moving. The nursery costs were going over budget, and I didn't want to liquidate any of the main portfolio assets until the quarter closed. Tax implications, you know." "You forged her signature," Adrian said, but the conviction was already leaking out of his voice. He was entering the negotiation phase. "Don't use such dramatic words," Lorraine snapped. "I utilized a family credit line. It is temporary. I will pay it off when the dividends clear next month. Honestly, Adrian, I did this to help you. Do you have any idea how much custom wainscoting costs?" "But you can't just you can't just use her name," Adrian said. He sounded like a teenager asking to borrow the car, not a man confronting a felony. "She is upset." "Savannah is hormonal," Lorraine said dismissively, "and frankly, she does not understand how high-level liquidity works. If I explained the tax brackets to her, she would be bored to tears. Tell her it is handled. I am taking care of it. It is for the baby. For heaven's sake." I looked at Adrian. He was rubbing the back of his neck. His shoulders had slumped. "Okay," Adrian said, "but you have to pay it off. Mom, immediately, before the statement comes." "I said I would," Lorraine replied. "Now, are we done with this interrogation? I have a caterer to deal with. The baby shower is in 4 days, and I want everyone to be in a good mood. I don't want any sour faces." "Yeah," Adrian said. "Okay, bye, Mom." He hung up. The silence that followed was worse than the one before. It was the silence of capitulation. Adrian put the phone on the counter and looked at me. He looked relieved. "See," he said, "it is just a bridge thing. She is waiting for dividends to clear. She didn't mean any harm. Sav, she operates on a different level with money. She thinks of all our accounts as one big family pot. She committed fraud." "Adrian," I said, "and you just let her off the hook." "What did you want me to do?" he asked, his voice rising in frustration. "Call the police on my mother over a nursery renovation that she is paying off next month." "I wanted you to be angry," I said. "I wanted you to defend me." Adrian walked over to me. He tried to take my hand, but I pulled it away. "I am on your side," he said. I told her to pay it off, and she will. But listen to me, Savannah, please. The baby shower is Saturday. 50 people are coming, her friends, my boss, family we haven't seen in years. He took a deep breath. Please don't make this a thing, he said. I stared at him. Make this a thing. Don't bring it up, he said. Not this weekend. Just let her have her day. Let us get through the shower. Let everyone have a good time, and then we can deal with the boundaries later. If you start a war now, it will ruin everything. She will make a scene, you will get stressed, and it is bad for the baby. It felt like a physical blow, a distinct, sharp slap across the face. He wasn't asking me to forgive her. He was asking me to perform. He was asking me to smile and eat cake and open gifts in the house of a woman who had stolen my identity. All because the appearance of a happy family was more important to him than the safety of his wife. I looked at the man I had married. I saw the fear in his eyes. He wasn't afraid of his mother's crime. He was afraid of her disapproval. He was terrified of the awkwardness that would ensue if the boat was rocked. Something inside me quietly disconnected. It was the tether of trust, snapping cleanly in two. Okay, I said. Adrian exhaled, his whole body relaxing. Thank you. I knew you would understand. It is just complicated with her. I understand perfectly, I said. I am going to hop in the shower, he said, leaning in to kiss my cheek again. I didn't move away this time, but I didn't lean into it either. I felt like a statue. We can watch a movie later, just relax. Sure, I said. He walked out of the kitchen. I heard his footsteps on the stairs. I heard the bathroom door close. I picked up the documents. I folded them neatly. I was not going to cause a scene. I was not going to scream. Adrian wanted peace. I would give him the silence of the grave. I pulled my phone out and dialed a number I knew by heart. This is Mara, the voice on the other end answered after one ring. It was sharp, alert. Mara Ellison worked the night shift in the ER. She didn't do small talk. She stole $50,000 from me, I said, and Adrian just asked me not to ruin the party. There was a pause on the line. I could hear the background noise of a hospital PA system. Are you safe? Mara asked. Physically? Yes. Legally? No. Did he admit he knew? No, I said. He didn't know, but he knows now. And he chose to look away. He called it administrative. He wants me to smile on Saturday. Okay, Mara said. Her voice dropped into that calm, commanding register she used when a trauma patient was bleeding out. Listen to me closely. Savannah, you are done negotiating. You are in survival mode now. Do not argue with him again. Do not bring it up. If he thinks you have rolled over, he won't warn her. I am not rolling over, I said. I know you aren't. You are gathering ammo. Saturday is not a party anymore. It is a deposition. I am coming early. I am going to be glued to your side. I don't know if I can stand there and let her hug me, I whispered. My hand was shaking. You can, Mara said, because you are smarter than them. Listen, if she makes a speech, and she will make a speech, I want you to let her talk. Let her dig the hole. But you need protection. Do not go into that house without a wire. A wire? Your phone, Mara said. Voice memo app, or video. If she pulls anything, if she hands you so much as a passive-aggressive napkin, I want it recorded. This isn't a mother-in-law problem anymore. Sav, this is a forensic audit. I have the loan docs, I said. I have the IP logs. Good. Make copies, Mara instructed. Digital and physical. Put them in a folder that Adrian cannot access. Do you have a safe place? I will make one, I said. I will see you Saturday, Mara said. And Savannah, don't drink the punch. I hung up. I spent the next hour working with the efficiency of a machine. I went to the home office while Adrian was showering. I scanned every document into a cloud drive that was password protected, separate from our shared family account. I created a new folder. I named it Insurance. I printed 2 fresh copies of the loan agreement and the IP trace. I put one set in my work bag, buried under compliance manuals. I put the other set in the glove compartment of my car. Locked. I walked back into the kitchen. On the counter, the mail was piled up. On top of the stack was the invitation to my own baby shower. It was heavy cardstock, cream with gold foil lettering, a golden hour celebration for Savannah and baby Grant. It looked expensive. It looked perfect. I ran my thumb over the embossed letters. Lorraine had designed this. She had chosen the font. She had chosen the guests. She had chosen the narrative. She thought she was inviting an audience to watch her play the benevolent matriarch. She thought I was just a prop, a vessel for her grandchild, a naive girl who could be bullied into silence with a lecture about tax brackets. She didn't know that the girl she invited was gone. I looked at the invitation one last time before tossing it into the recycling bin. I wasn't walking into a party on Saturday. I was walking into a courtroom, and for the first time in my marriage, I wasn't going to be the one on the defense. I was the prosecutor, and I had the smoking gun in my purse. The morning of the baby shower arrived with a sky the color of a bruised plum. It was humid, the kind of heavy, static air that makes your hair stick to your neck and your temper shorten by half. I stood in my bedroom, staring at the dress I had bought 3 weeks ago. It was a deep, rich emerald green. It was silk. It draped beautifully over my bump. And it was absolutely, defiantly not beige. My phone buzzed on the dresser. I knew who it was before I looked. "Good morning, Savannah," Lorraine's voice chirped. She sounded like a morning show host who had just had her 3rd espresso. "I'm just doing a final mental checklist. I sent the driver to pick up the balloons. The cake is here. I assume you have the champagne chiffon dress we discussed, the one with the empire waist." I put the phone on speaker and began applying my moisturizer. "Good morning, Lorraine. No, I am wearing green." There was a silence on the line. It was not an empty silence. It was a vacuum, sucking the air out of the conversation. "Green," she repeated. The word tasted sour in her mouth. "Savannah, dear, the entire palette is gold, cream, and sand. If you wear dark green, you are going to look like a bruise in the photographs. It will throw off the entire visual harmony. I look like a ghost in beige." "Lorraine," I said, rubbing the lotion into my skin with deliberate, slow circles. "And since I am the one being photographed, I would like to look alive." "It is not just about you," she snapped, her mask slipping for a fraction of a second before she pulled it back up. "It is about the family aesthetic. We are trying to create a memory here. But fine. If you insist on being difficult, I suppose we can work around it. I will just tell the photographer to adjust the lighting so you don't look too jarring." "Is that all?" I asked. "No," she said. Her voice dropped an octave, becoming intimate and conspiratorial. "I also wanted to make sure you are prepared for a little special segment I have planned. A very personal surprise. I have been working on it all week. It is a bit of advice, legacy wisdom." My hand froze on my cheek. "What kind of advice?" "Oh, you will see," she laughed. It was a light, tinkling sound that made the hair on my arms stand up. "It is from the heart. I think it will really clarify things for everyone. Just make sure you are smiling, dear. We want happy faces when the camera shutter clicks. Don't ruin everything with that brooding look you get." She hung up. I stared at the phone. Clarify things for everyone. That wasn't a promise of a gift. That was a threat of a public undressing. I sat down on the edge of the bed. My heart was doing a slow, heavy thud against my ribs. I picked up my phone again to check the time, and I saw a notification from my secondary email account, the old Yahoo address I used for junk mail and store coupons. I rarely checked it, but the subject line caught my eye. Subject: "She is typing." The sender was anonymous, a random string of numbers and letters. I opened it. There was no text in the body of the email, just an attachment. It was a grainy, low-resolution photograph, taken from a weird angle, likely from a doorway or over a shoulder. It showed a computer screen. On the screen was a Word document, The zoom was poor, but the title at the top of the page was bold and legible. 47 reasons. Below the title was a list. I couldn't read the items. They were just blurry lines of black text on white, but I could see the cursor blinking at the bottom of the page in the photo. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. Someone was in that house. Someone had seen what she was writing, and someone wanted me to know it was coming. Was it a warning, a taunt, or was it help I didn't have time to analyze it? The doorbell rang. I walked downstairs, moving carefully. My balance was off these days. When I opened the door, Tessa was standing there. She looked like she had run all the way from her car. Her face was pale, and she was clutching a garment bag. "I need to use your bathroom," she said, pushing past me. "I think I'm going to be sick." I followed her to the powder room. She splashed cold water on her face, ruining her makeup. But she didn't seem to care. She grabbed a towel and pressed it against her eyes. "She is insane," Tessa whispered into the towel. "Savannah, she is actually insane." "What happened?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. "I went over there this morning to drop off the party favors," Tessa said, lowering the towel. Her eyes were red. "She was on the phone with Aunt Beverly. She didn't hear me come in. She was laughing. She said—" Tessa swallowed hard. She said, "By the time I am done with her today, she will be begging me to let her stay in this family. I am going to show Adrian exactly what he married." Tessa looked at me, her hands shaking. "She isn't throwing a shower. Savannah, she is throwing a trial. She wants to humiliate you so badly that you either leave or you break. She wants to break you so she can rebuild you as a silent little doll." "I know," I said. Tessa blinked. I know she has a plan," I said. "And I know she has a list." "You have to not go," Tessa said, stepping forward and grabbing my hands. "Seriously, fake a migraine. Go to the hospital. Say the baby is coming. Anything. Don't walk into that house." "If I don't go," I said, pulling my hands away gently. "She wins. She spins the narrative. She tells everyone I am unstable, fragile, ungrateful. She tells Adrian I couldn't handle the pressure of his family's love, and nothing changes. She still has the loan. She still has the control. So you are just going to walk in there and let her execute you?" "No," I said. "I am going to walk in there and let her hand me the weapon." The front door opened again. It was Mara. Mara Ellison brought the energy of a trauma unit into my hallway. She was wearing a sharp black jumpsuit that looked professional enough for a party, but practical enough for a street fight. She carried a large tote bag and a look of absolute determination. "Okay," Mara said, dropping her bag on the bench. "Tessa, fix your mascara. You look like a raccoon. Savannah, get upstairs. We have 40 minutes to turn you into the Iron Lady." Up in the bedroom. The mood shifted. It wasn't a party preparation. It was a war room. Mara zipped up my green dress. It fit perfectly. The silk felt cool and heavy, like armor. "Okay," Mara said, turning me to face the full-length mirror. "Listen to me. She is going to try to trigger you. That is the whole game. She wants you to cry. She wants you to yell. She wants you to look crazy so she can look like the long-suffering saint." "I won't cry," I said. Staring at my reflection, I looked tired, but I looked solid. The green dress made my eyes look fierce. "If she insults the dress," Mara instructed, "you say, 'I wanted to match the vibrance of the occasion.' If she insults your weight, you say, 'Our daughter is growing strong.' Do not apologize, do not explain, and do not let her separate you from the herd. Stay near me, or stay near Adrian." "Adrian is part of the problem," I said quietly. "Then stay near me," Mara said. "I am your witness. I have my phone fully charged. I cleared the storage. If she monologues, I am recording." I walked over to my bedside table. I opened the drawer and took out the folded papers, the loan document, the IP trace. The summary of the Juniper Row Shell Company. I slipped them into a slim leather clutch. It barely fit, but it closed with a satisfying snap. Ready? Mara asked. No, I said. But let's go. The drive to the Grant estate took 20 minutes. We drove in silence. When we pulled into the long, curved driveway, the house loomed over us. It was a beautiful house, a colonial revival with white pillars and manicured hedges, today. It looked like a mouth waiting to swallow me. Cars were already lining the street, expensive SUVs, luxury sedans. The tribe was gathering. We walked to the front door. I didn't knock. I had a key. Though I suspected Lorraine would change the locks by tomorrow, the inside of the house smelled of expensive lilies and tension. The decorations were, as promised, aggressively beige. Balloons in shades of sand and cream floated in clusters. A banner made of gold glitter reading "Welcome Baby Grant" was strung across the grand staircase. It was tasteful. It was cold. It looked like the lobby of a high-end fertility clinic. Lorraine was in the living room, directing 2 catering staff on the precise angle of a cheese platter. She saw me and stopped. Her eyes raked over my green dress. For a second, her lip curled. Then, the smile appeared. "Savannah," she cried, opening her arms. "You are here. And oh, look at that color. It is certainly bold." "Hello, Lorraine," I said, letting her air kiss my cheek. She smelled of Chanel No. 5 and hairspray. "The house looks lovely." "We do our best," she sighed, casting a martyred look at the ceiling. "Even when our guests of honor decide to go off script. But never mind. Come, I want you to greet Aunt Beverly. She's in the sunroom." I walked toward the sunroom, Mara trailing a few steps behind me like a bodyguard. Aunt Beverly Lane was sitting in a wicker chair, nursing a glass of iced tea. She was Robert Grant's older sister, a woman who had survived 3 husbands and 40 years of Grant family politics. She had eyes like a hawk and a reputation for honesty that often got her excluded from dinner parties. "Well," Beverly said as I approached, "you look like a forest spirit, better than looking like a bowl of oatmeal, which is what the rest of this room looks like." I smiled. Genuinely this time. "Hi, Aunt Beverly?" She gestured for me to bend down. I leaned in. "She is up to something," Beverly whispered. Her voice smelled of peppermint and gin. "I saw her with that folder, the thick one. She has that look in her eye, the one she had when she went after my brother's second wife." I stiffened. "What did she do to the second wife?" "She killed her with kindness," Beverly said darkly. "She threw a dinner party, toasted her, complimented her, and then proceeded to tell a story about the wife's past, some little indiscretion from college framed as a lesson in forgiveness. She humiliated the poor girl so badly in front of the bank board that she left town a month later. Lorraine calls it pruning the family tree. She thinks she is the gardener." Beverly gripped my hand. Her fingers were bony and strong. "Don't let her prune you," she hissed. "You have got more spine than that girl did. I can see it. If she starts her speech, you stare her down. She hates it when people don't look away." "I won't look away," I promised. "Good." Beverly released me. "Now go get a drink. Not the punch. I saw her putting something extra in it, probably to loosen tongues." I straightened up. I looked across the room. Adrian had just arrived. He was wearing a polo shirt that matched the balloons. He looked handsome and weak. He was talking to a group of his college friends, laughing a little too loudly. He hadn't come to find me yet. He was staying in the safe zone, just as I predicted. I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was a young waiter, holding a tray of hors d'oeuvres. "Excuse me, ma'am," he mumbled. "Mrs. Grant asked me to give you this." He handed me a napkin. I took it. It was a cocktail napkin, embossed with gold foil, but someone had written on the back in blue ink, "Smile. You are on camera." I looked up to find Lorraine. She was standing across the room, near the fireplace. She held a glass of champagne, and she was watching me. When our eyes met, she raised her glass in a silent toast. It wasn't a greeting. It was the bell ringing for round 1. I folded the napkin and put it in my clutch, right next to the evidence of her felony. "Is everything okay?" Mara asked, appearing at my elbow. "She is taunting me," I said softly. She wants me to panic. Are you panicking? I placed my hand on my stomach. The baby kicked, a strong, reassuring thud against my palm. I thought about the nursery I was paying for with a stolen loan. I thought about the shell company. I thought about Adrian laughing at the jokes that demeaned me. No, I said. I am not panicking. I am waiting. Waiting for what? For her to make the mistake, I said. She thinks she is the director of this play. She thinks she wrote the script, but she forgot that every tragedy has a fatal flaw. And what is hers? Mara asked. She talks too much, I said. And she thinks I am listening to learn. She doesn't realize I am listening to record. I took a deep breath of the lily-scented air. Let's go sit down. Mara, it is almost showtime. I walked toward the velvet armchair Lorraine had positioned in the center of the room. It faced the guests. It faced the fireplace. It was the perfect spot for a public execution. I sat down. I smoothed my green silk dress over my knees. I crossed my ankles. I rested my hand on my clutch. I was ready. Lorraine clapped her hands. The sound was sharp, cutting through the chatter. Everyone, she called out, her voice sweet and terrible. Gather round. Before we get to the gifts, I have a little something special I want to share. The room went quiet. The air grew heavy. I looked at Lorraine. I didn't blink. Go ahead. I thought, pull the trigger. You have no idea that the gun is pointed backward. The Grant estate had been transformed into something that did not resemble a home so much as a high-end showroom for a lifestyle brand that sold insecurity disguised as elegance. The living room was suffocating. Every available surface was covered in decorations that adhered strictly to the golden hour theme. There were arches of balloons in varying shades of cream, sand, and metallic gold. There were banners strung with invisible wire that spelled out, "Welcome Baby Grant," in glittering cursive letters that seemed to float in the air. The gift table was already piled high with boxes wrapped in white paper and tied with satin ribbons, arranged so precisely that I felt an urge to knock them over just to prove gravity still existed in this house. I stood near the entrance to the sunroom, clutching my glass of sparkling water like it was a weapon. I scanned the room. There were at least 50 people here. I recognized perhaps 5 of them. The rest were the cast members of Lorraine's life. There were women from the Historical Society with stiff hair and stiffer smiles. There were partners from Adrian's law firm who looked like they were checking their watches while calculating billable hours. There were distant cousins who I had met once at our wedding and who still called me Samantha. It was not a baby shower for me. It was a networking event for my unborn daughter. Smile, darling, a woman I did not know said as she squeezed my arm. She was wearing a beige linen suit. You must be over the moon. Lorraine has outdone herself. She certainly has, I said, my voice tight. And look at that dress, the woman said, her eyes dipping to my emerald silk. So bold. Did you not get the memo about the neutrals? I prefer to be seen, I said. The woman laughed uncertainly and drifted away. I looked across the room and saw the front door open. A hush seemed to ripple through the entryway, followed by a sudden burst of enthusiastic greetings. Lorraine, who had been holding court near the fireplace, immediately brightened and rushed forward. Sloane, Lorraine cried out. You made it. My stomach gave a hard, violent twist. Sloane Hart walked into the room. She looked magnificent. She looked perfect. And she looked like she was part of the furniture. She was wearing a jumpsuit in a shimmering champagne color that matched the balloons exactly. Her blonde hair was blown out in soft waves. She held a gift bag that was, naturally, gold and cream. I realized then why Lorraine had been so insistent on the color palette. It wasn't just about aesthetics. It was about tribalism. Everyone in the room was wearing the uniform. Everyone was part of the golden hour, except me. In my deep green dress, I wasn't the guest of honor. I was the visual discord. I was the weed in the garden. Lorraine had set the stage so that Sloane would look like the natural fit for Adrian, blending seamlessly into his world. While I stood out as the jarring, stubborn outsider who couldn't follow simple instructions, Adrian walked over to Sloane. He gave her a hug, a friendly, lingering hug that lasted 2 seconds longer than I would have liked. Sloane said something that made him throw his head back and laugh. It was a relaxed laugh, the kind of laugh he used to have with me before we started arguing about his mother. I felt a presence at my shoulder. It was Lorraine. She didn't look at me. She was looking at Adrian and Sloane, a small, satisfied smile playing on her lips. "She looks lovely, doesn't she?" Lorraine murmured. "She looks like she matches the drapes," I said. Lorraine turned to me. Her eyes were hard little marbles of blue ice. She reached out and adjusted the strap of my dress. Her fingers were cold against my skin. "You know," she whispered, leaning in so close I could smell the champagne on her breath. I was annoyed about the green at first, but now that I see it, I think it is perfect. "Is that so?" "Yes," she purred. "It makes you look so separate. It makes it very clear who belongs in the picture and who is just visiting. It will make everything I have to say later much easier for people to accept." She patted my cheek 2 sharp little taps and walked away before I could respond. I stood there, frozen. My blood was boiling, hot and fast, beneath my skin. It will make everything I have to say later much easier. She wasn't hiding it anymore. She was foreshadowing her own kill shot. "Hey, babe." Adrian appeared at my side. He was flushed and happy. He wrapped an arm around my waist, but his eyes were still scanning the room, looking for the next hand to shake. "Can you believe this turnout?" he asked, gesturing with his beer bottle. "Mom really pulled it off. The food is incredible. Have you tried the crab cakes?" I looked at him. I looked at the man who was supposed to be my partner, the father of the child kicking my ribs. "Adrian," I said quietly, "do you see who is here? Do you see Sloane?" "Yeah, I said hi," he said, dismissing it with a shrug. "She is being super cool. She asked about the baby. See, I told you it wouldn't be weird. You are overthinking it. Sav, everyone is having a great time." "I am not having a great time," I said. Adrian's smile faltered. He let out a sigh, the kind of exhale a parent gives a tantruming toddler. "Please, Savannah, not now. Just look around. Mom did all of this for us. Can you just be grateful for 2 hours for me?" He squeezed my waist, but it didn't feel like affection. It felt like a restraint. "Sure," I said. "For you." He kissed my temple, satisfied that he had managed the situation, and walked back toward his college friends. I watched him go. I felt a profound sense of loneliness. I was the guest of honor at my own baby shower, and I was completely alone. "He is blind, you know." I turned. Mara was standing near a potted fern, holding her phone. She wasn't drinking. Her eyes were locked on Lorraine across the room. "He isn't blind," I said. "He is willfully keeping his eyes closed. There is a difference." "Sloane is wearing the theme," Mara noted dryly. "Subtle." "Lorraine coordinated it," I said. "She is directing the scene. Sloane is the leading lady. I am the villain." "Well," Mara said, shifting her stance, "villains have more fun, and they usually survive until the sequel. Are you holding it together?" "I am angry, Mara." "I am so angry I can feel my pulse in my teeth." "Good," Mara said. "Keep it there. Don't let it out. Not yet. Look at her." She nodded toward the fireplace. Lorraine was laughing with a group of women, but her eyes kept darting toward the clock on the mantel. She was checking the time. She was on a schedule. "She is getting ready," I said. "So are we," Mara said. She tapped her pocket. "I have the voice recorder app open running in the background. I have been recording for 20 minutes. I caught that little comment she made about your dress. By the way, who belongs and who is visiting? That is going to sound great in court." The front door opened again. A breathless flurry of activity signaled the arrival of the final guest. Tessa Grant rushed in. She looked disheveled. Her hair was frizzy from the humidity, and she was clutching a wrapped gift against her chest like a shield. She scanned the room frantically until her eyes found me. She didn't say hello to anyone. She didn't stop to get a drink. She beelined straight for me, weaving through the crowd of beige suits and cocktail dresses. "I am sorry I'm late," she gasped, grabbing my arm and pulling me slightly toward the window, away from the nearest group of guests. "I had to verify something. I went back to the bank." "Tessa, you are going to get caught," I whispered. "It doesn't matter," she said. Her eyes were wide and terrified. "Savannah, she moved money again this morning. She transferred another 10,000 out of the line of credit. She is draining it. She thinks she can spend it all before you find out." "She is wrong," I said, patting my clutch. "I have the papers. Tessa, I have everything." "If she starts something," Tessa whispered, gripping my arm so hard it hurt. "If she tries to embarrass you, promise me you will use them. Don't protect the family. Protect yourself." "I intend to," I said. Suddenly, a sharp, crystalline sound cut through the noise of the party. Ding! 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 The chatter slowly died down. Heads turned. Lorraine was standing in front of the fireplace. She was tapping a silver spoon against her champagne flute. She stood on the slightly raised hearth, giving her a few inches of height over the crowd. She looked radiant. She looked like a queen addressing her subjects. "If I could have everyone's attention, please," she called out. Her voice was projected perfectly, trained from years of chairing charity boards. The room fell silent. 50 faces turned toward her. Adrian moved to the front of the crowd. Smiling up at his mother, Sloane stood near him, looking attentive and poised. I stayed by the window. Mara took a half-step closer to me. Tessa shrank back against the curtains. "Thank you all for coming," Lorraine began, beaming. "It warms my heart to see so many friends and family here to celebrate the arrival of the newest grant. We have so many lovely gifts to open, and so much cake to eat." A polite ripple of laughter moved through the room. "But," Lorraine continued, her face turning serious, her expression shifting into a mask of solemn concern. "Before we get to the festivities, I have a special presentation, a tradition, if you will." She paused for effect. The room was dead quiet. "I have been thinking a lot about what it takes to make a marriage work in this family," Lorraine said, "and what it takes to raise a grant. It requires strength. It requires honesty. And sometimes, it requires hearing things that are difficult." My heart hammered against my ribs. Here it was. "I have written something for my daughter-in-law," Lorraine said, turning her gaze directly toward me. It wasn't a warm look. It was a spotlight. A bit of advice, a roadmap, really, to help her understand where she stands and what she needs to do to truly be part of this family. She reached down to a small table beside her. There was a leather-bound notebook sitting there. It looked expensive, old, and heavy. She opened the notebook. From inside the leather cover, she pulled out a thick white envelope. It was sealed. "I call this," Lorraine said, lifting the envelope for the room to see, "47 Reasons My Son Should Divorce You." The title hung in the air. For a second, nobody moved. The guests looked at each other, unsure if they had heard correctly. Was it a joke? A game, then? Lorraine let out a small, musical laugh. "Oh, don't look so shocked. It is tongue-in-cheek, mostly." The tension broke. The room laughed. It was a nervous, relieved laughter. They decided to interpret it as comedy. They decided it was a roast. "Come here, Savannah," Lorraine beckoned, waving the envelope. "Come and receive your gift." I felt the blood drain from my face, but my legs didn't shake. I felt a cold clarity settle over me. I looked at Mara. She gave me a tiny, sharp nod. I looked at Tessa. She had covered her mouth with her hand. I stepped away from the window. I walked through the crowd. The guests parted for me, creating a path. I could feel their eyes on my green dress. I could feel their judgment. I walked up to the fireplace. I stood in front of Lorraine. She was smiling, but her eyes were dead. 47 reasons, I asked. My voice was steady. "Just a little constructive criticism, dear," Lorraine said, loud enough for the back row to hear. To help you improve. For Adrian. For the baby. She held out the envelope. I reached out and took it. It felt heavy in my hand. It felt like a bomb. Go on, Lorraine urged, gesturing to the crowd. Open it. Read a few to us. Let's all have a laugh. Adrian chuckled from the front row. Go ahead. Sav Mom worked hard on it. I looked at my husband. He was laughing. He was encouraging his mother to humiliate me because he thought it was easier than stopping her. I looked back at Lorraine. She was waiting for me to crumble. She was waiting for me to blush, to stammer, to cry. I broke the seal on the envelope. I pulled out the papers. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to burn the house down. The room was so quiet you could hear the carbonation fizzing in the champagne glasses. Lorraine stood on the hearth, her chest heaving slightly with the thrill of her own performance. She looked at me, her eyes bright with malice, waiting for the devastating impact of her title to sink in. 47 reasons, she repeated, savoring the syllables. 47 reasons my son should divorce Savannah. For 3 seconds, the air was sucked out of the room. The guests looked at each other, their faces frozen in a rictus of social panic. Was this a joke? Was this a murder mystery game? Then, a laugh broke out. It started from the back, from one of Adrian's college fraternity brothers who had clearly had too much of the punch. Good one, Mrs. G, he shouted. The tension snapped. The room exhaled. A wave of laughter rippled through the crowd. They had decided, collectively, to interpret this as a roast. It was a dark, edgy comedy routine, and they were the sophisticated audience who got the joke. I looked at Adrian. He was standing in the front row, holding his beer. He looked at his mother, then at the laughing crowd, and then he smiled. He chuckled. He shook his head in that, "Oh, Mom" way he always did. He laughed, in that fraction of a second. The last thread of my marriage unraveled. It didn't snap violently. It just dissolved. He saw his mother hand his pregnant wife a manifesto of hate in front of 50 people, and his instinct was to join the audience. He was not my husband in that moment. He was just another extra in Lorraine's movie. I looked down at the envelope in my hand. I didn't feel sad. I felt like I was at work, sitting at my desk at Halcyon Ridge, opening a case file that I already knew contained a smoking gun. I slid a finger under the flap and ripped it open. The sound was sharp, like a bone snapping. I pulled out the papers, 4 pages, heavy bond paper, stapled in the top left corner. Read the first one, someone yelled from the crowd. Lorraine nodded encouragingly. Go on, Savannah, don't be shy. We can all learn from our little imperfections. I looked at the list. It was numbered, 1 through 47. Reason number 1, I read aloud, my voice clear and steady. She cooks pasta from a jar and pretends it is homemade, which is an insult to the Grant family palate. The room roared. It was the kind of safe, domestic humor they loved. Guilty, I said. Looking up, I didn't smile. Keep going, Lorraine chirped. I scanned down the page. Reason number 5, I read. She refuses to let me decorate the guest room, insisting on her own modern taste which lacks warmth. More laughter. Mother-in-laws, right? A woman near me whispered, nudging my arm. Reason number 10, I continued. She is too independent. She does not ask for help, which makes her seem arrogant and unconnected to the family unit. The laughter was slightly more muted for that one. It sounded less like a joke and more like a complaint. But Lorraine was beaming. She thought she was winning. She thought she was stripping me bare, layer by layer, exposing my inadequacy as a wife. I flipped the page. My eyes ran down the list. Reason 12, reason 15, reason 18. They were all the same petty grievances about my cleaning, my job, my family background, and then I saw the number 23. I stopped. The text for reason 23 was longer than the others. It was a paragraph. I read it silently first. The words jumped off the page. Black and sharp. Reason 23. She is so oblivious to the financial realities of this family that she did not even notice when I used her digital profile to secure the bridge funding for the nursery. A wife who does not monitor her own credit standing is a liability to the Grant estate. If she cannot protect her own name, she cannot protect my son's assets. I felt a cold shiver go down my spine. It was not fear. It was the thrill of the catch. She had written it down. She had actually, physically, undeniably written it down, in her arrogance, in her absolute certainty that she was the hero of this story. She had framed her felony as my failure. She believed so thoroughly that she was right that she didn't realize she had just typed out a confession to bank fraud. I looked up. The room had quieted down. Sensing the pause, Lorraine was watching me, her head cocked to the side. "What is the matter, dear?" she asked, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Did you find a hard one? Is it the one about your tone of voice?" I looked her dead in the eye. "No, Lorraine," I said. "It is reason number 23. "Oh." She blinked, seemingly trying to remember which insult that was. "Well, read it. Let's hear it." "Are you sure?" I asked. "It is very specific." "I have nothing to hide," Lorraine said, spreading her arms wide. "I am an open book. Read it." The trap snapped shut. I lifted the paper. I turned slightly so that I was facing both Lorraine and Adrian. "Reason number 23, I announced. My voice was different now. It had lost the conversational tone. It was the voice I used when I was presenting evidence to a compliance board. "She is so oblivious to the financial realities of this family," I read, enunciating every syllable, "that she did not even notice when I used her digital profile to secure the bridge funding for the nursery." I paused. The laughter that had been bubbling in the room died instantly. It was as if someone had cut the power to the building. I continued reading. "A wife who does not monitor her own credit standing is a liability to the Grant estate." I lowered the paper. For a long moment, there was absolute silence, the kind of silence where you can hear a clock ticking 3 rooms away. Adrian's smile had vanished. He looked confused. He looked at his mother, then at me. "Wait, what?" Lorraine's smile was frozen on her face, but her eyes were darting around the room, assessing the reaction. She realized, too late, that the joke hadn't landed. She realized that to the outside world, to the people who didn't live inside the Grant family distortion field, this didn't sound like a quirk. It sounded like a crime. "It is well. That is just a manner of speaking," Lorraine stammered, her laugh sounding brittle and sharp. "It is about attention to detail. It is about how Savannah never checks the mail." "No, Lorraine," I said. I reached into my clutch. I pulled out the folded documents I had prepared, the paper from the bank, the IP log, the corporate registration for Juniper Row Holdings. "It isn't a manner of speaking," I said. I held the documents up. "It is a manner of banking." I walked toward the coffee table in the center of the room. I laid the papers down next to the cake, spreading them out like a royal flush. "You said I didn't notice," I said, my voice cutting through the silence. "You said I was a liability because I didn't see you use my digital profile." I pointed to the IP log. "But I did notice, Lorraine, I noticed on January 10th, I noticed when the digital signature was authorized from an iPad with the device ID ending in 492. I looked at the guests. "Does anyone here have an iPad with that ID, or is it the one sitting on the kitchen counter right now?" The color drained from Lorraine's face so fast it looked like a special effect. She took a step back, her heel catching on the hearth. She stumbled, grabbing the mantelpiece for support. "You hacked me," she hissed. "You invaded my privacy." "I audited my own credit report," I corrected her, "and I found $50,000 worth of debt that I didn't sign for, debt that went to a shell company called Juniper Row." I looked at Adrian. He was pale. He looked like he was going to be sick. "Adrian," I said, "you asked me not to make a scene. You asked me to let her have her day. Well, this is her day. She wanted to tell everyone the truth about our marriage. Here it is." Savannah, Adrian whispered. Stop. No, a voice said from the back of the room. We all turned. Tessa stepped out from the curtains. She was shaking, her hands clenched into fists at her sides, but her head was up. She isn't lying, Tessa said. Her voice was small, but it carried. I work at the credit union. I saw the transaction. Mom used her own Wi-Fi to sign Savannah's name. I saw the logs. A gasp went through the room. Aunt Beverly slammed her iced tea down on a side table. I knew it, she muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. I knew she was crooked. Lorraine looked at her daughter. The betrayal on her face was total. Tessa, you ungrateful little... Stop talking, Mom, Tessa said, tears streaming down her face. Just stop. You wrote it down. You put it in a list. You are the one who wanted to read it. Lorraine looked around the room. She was losing them. The faces that had been smiling at her 5 minutes ago were now looking at her with horror, with pity, with judgment. She was no longer the matriarch. She was the villain. She turned back to me, her eyes wild. You set me up, she screamed. You let me read that. You knew, and you let me walk into a trap. I didn't write the list, Lorraine, I said calmly. I didn't forge the signature, and I didn't call 50 people here to witness it. You did all of that. I just showed up in the right dress. I saw Mara in my peripheral vision. She was holding her phone up, steady as a rock. The red recording light was on. She gave me a thumbs up. Lorraine was hyperventilating now. She looked at Adrian, begging for him to fix it. Adrian, tell them it was a family arrangement. Tell them she agreed to it. Adrian looked at his mother. Then he looked at the papers on the table. Then he looked at me. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He was paralyzed. The script he had followed his whole life, protect Mom. Keep the peace had no lines for this situation. He can't tell them that, I said, because if he does, he becomes an accessory to fraud, and I don't think he wants to lose his security clearance. Adrian closed his mouth. He looked down at his shoes. He stepped back, away from his mother. That was the kill shot. The physical distance he put between them was the end of her power, but Lorraine wasn't done. She looked for an ally. Her eyes landed on Sloane Hart. Sloane was standing near the window, holding her champagne glass. She looked impeccable. She looked like the perfect daughter-in-law Lorraine had always wanted. Sloane, Lorraine cried out, extending a hand. You understand, don't you? You know how this family works? Tell them, Savannah is overreacting. You are a lawyer. Tell them this is just a misunderstanding. Sloane Hart took a sip of her champagne. She swallowed slowly. She set the glass down on a coaster. She looked at Lorraine with a mixture of boredom and professional disdain. Actually, Mrs. Grant, Sloane said. Her voice was cool, crisp, and lethal. I think I should clarify something. What? Lorraine asked, blinking. You invited me here today, Sloane said, addressing the room, because you told me that Savannah was unstable. You told me that she was having a breakdown, that the marriage was ending, and that Adrian needed a familiar face to help him transition. Adrian's head snapped up. What? She told me, Sloane continued, looking directly at Adrian, that today was going to be the end of your marriage. She asked me to be here as a witness. She said, and I quote, I want you to see her fall apart so you can be there to pick up the pieces. The room was so silent it felt like a vacuum. Sloane turned back to Lorraine. But I am a corporate attorney, Mrs. Grant, Sloane said. And what I just heard from that list that is not a breakdown, that is a confession to a felony under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. And frankly, I don't want to be anywhere near a federal investigation. Sloane picked up her purse. I am leaving, she said. Adrian, good luck. You are going to need it. Sloane turned and walked out the front door. Her heels clicked on the hardwood, a rhythmic countdown to Lorraine's total destruction. Lorraine stood alone in the center of her beige living room. Her hands were shaking. The 47 reasons, was still in my hand. I looked at reason number 23 again. "You know," I said softly, breaking the silence, "you were right about one thing. Lorraine, a wife should know where the money comes from, and now I do." I dropped the list on the floor. It fluttered down, landing at her feet. "Happy baby shower," I said. The exodus from the Grant estate was not a graceful departure. It was a flee, the guests, who had been laughing at my expense 5 minutes earlier, now scrambled for their coats and purses with the desperate energy of passengers evacuating a sinking ship. They mumbled vague apologies, avoided eye contact with Lorraine, and practically ran to their cars. The sound of engines revving in the driveway was the soundtrack to the death of Lorraine's social standing. Within 10 minutes, the house was empty of spectators. The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. It was not peaceful. It was the pressurized silence of a bomb squad analyzing a live wire. "Into the study," Aunt Beverly said. It was not a suggestion. She pointed a gnarled finger toward the heavy oak doors at the end of the hall. "Now, all of us." We filed in. The group was small. Me, Adrian, Tessa, Aunt Beverly, and Cal Morrison. Cal was Adrian's second cousin, a tax attorney with a sharp nose and an even sharper intolerance for nonsense. And of course, Lorraine. Lorraine walked to her desk and sat behind it. She did not slump. She did not hide. She sat with her spine rigid, gripping the armrests of her leather chair like it was a throne she was refusing to abdicate. She looked at us, her family, as if we were a mob of peasants who had broken into the palace. Adrian closed the double doors. The click of the latch sounded like a gunshot. "Explain," Adrian said. He remained standing. He looked at his mother across the desk, and for the first time in his life, he did not look like a boy seeking approval. He looked like a man looking at a stranger. Lorraine let out a sigh, reaching for a crystal paperweight and turning it over in her hands. "Adrian, please, do not use that tone with me. I have had a very stressful afternoon. I have just been humiliated in my own home by your wife." "You wrote the list, Lorraine," I said from the leather sofa where I sat next to Tessa. "You printed the confession." Lorraine's eyes snapped to me. "I wrote a guidance document. I was trying to protect my son. And you twisted it. You broke into my private files. You stole my data. And you staged this little coup to turn everyone against me." "The money, Mom," Adrian cut in. His voice was shaking, but it was loud. "Forget the list. Explain the money. Explain why Savannah has a $50,000 debt in her name that goes to your shell company." Lorraine slammed the paperweight down. "It is not a shell company. It is a holding entity, and I did it for you." "Do you think money just appears?" "Adrian, do you think the lifestyle you grew up with just happens? I move assets. I leverage credit. That is how wealth is built. I used Savannah's profile because she had clean credit and unused capacity. It was a strategic decision. I was going to pay it back before anyone noticed. It was a victimless crime until she decided to play detective." "It is wire fraud," Cal Morrison said. He was standing by the bookshelf, reading the documents I had given him. He didn't look up. "It is identity theft. It is bank fraud. And since you moved the money across state lines to a Delaware LLC, it is federal." Lorraine scoffed. "Oh, stop it. Cal, you are family. You are not going to prosecute me." "I am not," Cal said. Finally looking up, his face was grim. "But if the bank finds out, if the IRS audits that LLC, they will. And looking at these transfers, this isn't the first time. Is it?" The room went still. Tessa stood up. She had been crying, but now her face was dry and pale. "No," she said. "It is not." Lorraine glared at her daughter. "Tessa, sit down. Do not speak about things you do not understand." "I understand perfectly," Tessa said. Her voice was trembling, but she didn't sit. "I checked the logs. Mom, after Savannah showed me her file, I ran a query on my own social security number, and Adrian's. You have been doing this for years." Adrian turned to his sister. "What She opens lines of credit in our names, Tessa said, staring at her mother. She maxes them out to pay for maintenance on the properties or to cover her losses in the market, and then she pays the minimums from the trust so we don't get alerts. My credit score is 600 because of a credit card I didn't know I had until yesterday. She has been using us as collateral since we were in college. Adrian looked like he had been punched in the gut. He grabbed the back of a chair to steady himself. Mom, is that true? Lorraine didn't deny it. She just rolled her eyes. I manage the family estate. Adrian, it is all one pot. I use the tools available to me to keep this family afloat. You ungrateful children have no idea how much it costs to keep the lights on in a house like this. You just take the checks and live your happy little lives while I do the dirty work. You stole from us, Adrian whispered. You stole our identities. I gave you everything, Lorraine shrieked, standing up. I gave you the down payment for your house. I got you that job. I introduced you to the right people. And this is how you repay me, by siding with her. She pointed a shaking finger at me. She is the poison. Adrian, can't you see that before she came along? We were fine. We were a team. Now you are questioning me. You are looking at me like I am a criminal because she put these ideas in your head. She didn't put ideas in my head, Adrian said. She put proof in my hands. She is manipulating you, Lorraine yelled. She is a gold digger who trapped you with a pregnancy. And now she is trying to cut you off from your mother so she can have total control. She is precisely the kind of woman I warned you about. Enough, Aunt Beverly said. Beverly had been sitting in the corner, silent as a stone. Now she stood up. She walked over to the desk. She was shorter than Lorraine, but in that moment, she looked formidable. This is not about Savannah, Beverly said quietly. This is about you, Lorraine, and it is about time someone said it out loud. Lorraine sneered. Go back to your gin, Beverly. I remember when you did this to Robert, Beverly said. Lorraine froze. What are you talking about? Adrian asked, looking between his aunt and his mother. Your father, Beverly said to Adrian, keeping her eyes locked on Lorraine. He didn't just make bad investments before he died. That was the story Lorraine told everyone. The truth is, she forged his signature on 3 mortgages. She leveraged his business assets to fund her own social climbing. When he found out, he tried to divorce her. She told him that if he left, she would report the fraud and claim he did it. She held his own name hostage. He stayed to avoid prison, and the stress killed him 2 years later. The silence in the room was absolute. It was a horrified, heavy silence. You are lying, Lorraine whispered, but she sat back down. She looked smaller. I am not lying, Beverly said. I saw the papers then, just like I see the papers now. You have always used people like checkbooks. Lorraine, you think because you are a grant by marriage that you are above the law, but you are just a grifter in pearls. Lorraine looked at Adrian. Her eyes were wide, desperate. Adrian, honey, she is jealous. You know how she is. She has always hated me because I made this family successful. Adrian looked at his mother. He looked at the woman who had raised him, coddled him, and controlled him, and he finally saw the monster that had been living in his house. It stops now, Adrian said. He turned to Cal. Cal, what do we need to do to protect ourselves? Cal adjusted his glasses. First, we freeze everything. We put a fraud alert on all your accounts. We file an affidavit of identity theft for the loan Savannah found. That invalidates the debt. Then, we need to separate your assets from the trust. Completely. It will be messy, but it is necessary. If we don't, and she goes down, she takes you with her. Do it, Adrian said. And Savannah, Cal said, turning to me, you have grounds for a criminal complaint. If you file, she goes to prison, 5 years, minimum. Lorraine gasped. She looked at me, terror finally breaking through her narcissism. Savannah, you wouldn't. Think of the baby. Think of the scandal. You would send the grandmother of your child to jail. I looked at her. I thought about the baby shower. I thought about the green dress. I thought about the 47 reasons. I am not going to call the police. Lorraine, I said. Lorraine exhaled, her shoulders sagging. Thank God. I knew you were reasonable. But, I continued, my voice hard, I am setting a boundary, and it is permanent. I stood up and walked to the desk. I placed my hands on the leather surface. You will sign over full control of the nursery contract to us, I said. You will pay off the $50,000 immediately from your own personal funds, not the trust, and then you will disappear. Excuse me, Lorraine said. You are done, I said. You don't get to see the baby. You don't get to come to our house. You don't get to call. You are going to be a ghost. If you try to contact us, if you try to pull another financial stunt, or if you say one word about me to anyone in this town, I hand that file to the FBI, and I won't hesitate. Lorraine laughed nervously. You cannot be serious. I am his mother. You cannot keep me from my grandchild. Watch me, I said. Lorraine turned to Adrian. Adrian, tell her she is being ridiculous. You are not going to let her banish me. Adrian looked at me, then he looked at his mother. She is not banishing you, Mom, Adrian said. I am... Lorraine flinched as if he had slapped her. Adrian, you tried to destroy my marriage, Adrian said. His voice broke, but he kept going. You invited my ex-girlfriend to my wife's baby shower to stage a breakup. You stole my wife's identity. You stole from me. You stole from Tessa. You are not a mother. You are a predator. I love you, Lorraine cried. Tears were streaming down her face now, but they looked like a performance. I did everything for you. If that is love, Adrian said, I don't want it. Get out of my life. Mom, until you get help, until you fix the money, until you can prove you are a human being and not a bank robber, I don't want to see you. You don't mean that, Lorraine whispered. I do, Adrian said. He walked over to the door and opened it. Leave us alone. We have paperwork to do with Cal. Lorraine sat there for a moment. She looked around the room. She looked at Tessa, who refused to meet her eyes. She looked at Beverly, who was smiling grimly. She looked at me. Then, she stood up. She smoothed her skirt. She wiped her face. The mask slid back into place. The vulnerability vanished, replaced by a cold, hard rage. Fine, she said. She grabbed her purse. You want to play grown-up? Go ahead. See how long you last without me. She walked to the door. She stopped next to Adrian. She didn't look at him. She looked straight ahead. You think this is over because you found a few papers, she said, her voice low and venomous. You have no idea what I have built, and you have no idea what I can dismantle. This isn't over. She walked out. We heard her heels clicking down the hallway. We heard the front door open and slam shut. The silence that returned to the room was different this time. It wasn't pressurized. It was exhausted. Tessa slumped back onto the sofa and put her head in her hands. Aunt Beverly let out a long breath. Cal started typing on his phone, probably initiating the fraud alerts. I looked at Adrian. He was staring at the empty doorway. He looked 10 years older than he had this morning. He looked like a man who had just cut off his own limb to survive gangrene. He turned to me. His eyes were red. Let's go home, he said. We drove home in silence. The rain had started again, washing away the remains of the golden hour. When we got inside our house, our modest, messy, safe house, Adrian walked into the kitchen and put his phone on the counter. He opened the settings menu. I watched him. He scrolled to Mom. He hit block caller. He hit block on FaceTime. He hit block on messages. He put the phone down. He looked at me. I am sorry, he said. I am so sorry. Savannah. I walked over to him. I put my arms around him. He buried his face in my neck and started to cry. It was a deep, racking sob, the sound of a child realizing he is an orphan. I held him, but as I stared out the kitchen window at the dark street, I didn't feel safe. I thought about Lorraine's parting words. You have no idea what I can dismantle. Adrian had blocked her number. He thought he had closed the gate, but I remembered the look in her eyes. She wasn't gone. She was just regrouping. She was a woman who had forged her husband's name and survived. She was a woman who treated felony fraud like a strategy. We had won the battle of the baby shower, but the war had just begun. And a wounded animal is always the most dangerous thing in the woods. We thought the silence was a victory. We were wrong. Silence, for a woman like Lorraine Grant, is not a retreat. It is reloading. 3 days after the implosion at the baby shower, my phone pinged at 2 a.m. It was an email. The sender was Lorraine, but she had copied Adrian, Aunt Beverly, and, inexplicably, my own mother who lives 3 states away. The subject line was not, "I'm sorry." It was setting the record straight regarding the events of Saturday. I sat up in bed, the blue light of the screen stinging my eyes. I read the manifesto. It was 2,000 words of gaslighting distilled into a pure, potent toxin. Lorraine did not apologize for the loan. She did not apologize for the list. Instead, she framed the entire afternoon as a psychotic break orchestrated by me. She claimed I had hacked her personal devices to plant evidence because I was insecure about Adrian's bond with his family. She claimed the 47 Reasons was a private journal entry she had written in a moment of despair, which I had stolen and read aloud to humiliate her. She wrote, "I am a mother who only wanted to help, and I have been painted as a villain by a daughter-in-law who has systematically isolated my son from his heritage." I looked at Adrian. He was asleep beside me, his face drawn and gray even in repose. I deleted the email without waking him. He did not need to see it. He knew the truth, but the email was not for us. It was for the audience. By Wednesday, the money started moving. I received an alert from the bank. $10,000 had been wired into the joint account. The sender was LG Trust. There was no message, no memo, just the money. 2 days later, another $15,000 arrived. She was paying back the loan, but she was doing it in a way that erased the crime. If she paid it back before the billing cycle closed, she could claim it was never a theft, just a family bridge loan, as she had insisted. She was scrubbing the ledger. She was bleaching the digital crime scene. She thinks if the balance is 0, the felony disappears. I told Cal Morrison over the phone. It helps her defense, Cal admitted, his voice tinny through the speaker. But it also proves she had access. Don't spend a dime of it. Let it sit there. It is evidence of consciousness of guilt. But while the money was silent, the whispers were loud. My phone started buzzing with messages from people I barely knew. Cousins of Adrian, neighbors. They were checking in on me with that cloying, fake concern that masks a fishing expedition. Heard things got crazy on Saturday. Is Adrian okay? We heard you guys are having financial trouble. Lorraine is devastated. She said you wouldn't let her explain. Hope you guys can work it out. She was spinning the narrative, in her version. I was the unstable, controlling wife who had mismanaged our money and then blamed the mother-in-law to cover my tracks. She was telling people I was postpartum before I had even given birth. She was calling me a gold digger who was trying to cut Adrian off from his inheritance. Then, a text came through that cut through the noise. It was from a number I did not have saved. "This is Sloan. I don't want to get involved, but you should know she is telling the partners at the firm that you are mentally unwell. Also, for the record, she didn't just invite me to the shower. She sent me a script. She wanted me to bring up the summer of 2015 to trigger a nostalgia loop for Adrian. I am not a homewrecker, and I don't like being used as a prop. Watch your back." I stared at the screen. Summer of 2015. That was the year Adrian and Sloan had almost gotten engaged. Lorraine had tried to weaponize a memory to break my marriage in real time. I showed the text to Adrian. He read it twice. He didn't say anything. He just went to the sink and washed his dishes for a long time, scrubbing a clean plate until I thought the porcelain would crack. He was beginning to realize that his mother wasn't just attacking me. She was willing to burn his happiness to the ground just to be the one holding the ashes. But the real blow didn't come from the family. It came from my job. I work for the Halcyon Ridge Compliance Group, We are the people who catch white-collar criminals. My reputation is built on absolute, unshakable integrity. You cannot be a compliance officer if there is even a smudge on your ethics. It was my last week before maternity leave. I was clearing my desk, archiving files, preparing my handover notes. My boss, a stern man named David, called me into his office at 4 p.m. The blinds were drawn. That was never a good sign. "Sit down, Savannah," David said. He didn't look at me. He was looking at a file on his desk. "Is everything okay?" I asked, lowering myself into the chair. My back ached. "We received a complaint," David said. "An anonymous whistleblower report filed through the external ethics portal. It alleges that you have been using company resources, specifically our proprietary database access to run unauthorized background checks on private citizens for personal leverage." My blood ran cold. "That is a lie," I said. "I have never used the system for personal reasons." "The complaint includes a log," David said, sliding a piece of paper across the desk. "It shows a query for Juniper Row Holdings run from your terminal on January 17th. "I ran that query," I said, my voice steady. "But Juniper Row is a corporate entity suspected of financial fraud involving my own identity. I was the victim. David, I was verifying the legitimacy of a company that had stolen $50,000 from me." "The complaint frames it differently," David said. "It says you were investigating a family member to prepare for a divorce settlement. It claims you are using halcyon tools to conduct a personal vendetta." "Who sent this?" I asked, though I already knew. "It is anonymous," David said. "But given the severity of the accusation and the fact that you are going on leave, HR has decided to suspend your access immediately pending a full investigation. We cannot have a compliance officer under a cloud." I walked out of the office 10 minutes later with a cardboard box. I was suspended. 2 days before I was supposed to leave to have my baby. My career was put on ice. I sat in my car in the parking lot and called Tessa. "She went after my job," I said. "She filed an ethics complaint." "Give me the timestamp," Tessa said immediately. She didn't ask who she was. She knew. I gave her the time the complaint was filed. "I am on it," Tessa said. "If she did this digitally, she left a fingerprint. She always does. She is arrogant. She thinks the internet is anonymous." 2 hours later, Tessa called me back. I was at home, sitting on the nursery floor, staring at the crib I had paid for with a stolen loan. "I found it," Tessa said. "The complaint was submitted through a VPN, but the connection dropped for 3 seconds during the session and rerouted through a local ISP. I traced the handshake. It leads back to a static IP address registered to the Ridgecrest Garden Club." "The Garden Club. Mom is the president of the Garden Club," Tessa said. "She has the Wi-Fi password. She probably sat in the parking lot and did it so it wouldn't track back to the house, but she forgot that her phone auto-connects to the club network. She is trying to starve us out," I said. "She knows if I lose my job, we are dependent on Adrian's income. And if we are dependent on Adrian, she thinks she can squeeze him." When Adrian came home that night, I didn't yell. I was past yelling. I laid out the suspension letter. I laid out Tessa's findings about the Garden Club IP address. Adrian looked at the papers. He looked at me. He looked at my swollen stomach. "She tried to get you fired," he said. His voice was hollow. "She tried to destroy my career. Adrian, she tried to take away the health insurance for our daughter. This isn't a family feud. This is a siege." Adrian sat down on the floor. He put his head in his hands. "I blocked her," he whispered. "I returned the money. I told her to stay away. Why won't she stop?" "Because she hasn't won," I said. "And for Lorraine, if she isn't winning, she is losing. She will burn the whole world down before she admits she is wrong." Adrian looked up. His eyes were dry, but they were dark. The boyish charm was gone. The desire to keep the peace was gone. "She is not a mother," he said. It was the first time he had said it without a question mark. "She is an enemy." 3 days later, my water broke. It happened at midnight. The drive to the hospital was a blur of rain and contractions. But even in the pain, even in the chaos of labor, my mind was sharp. I made Adrian promise me one thing before we entered the delivery room. She is not allowed in. I grit out between contractions. Put her name on the blacklist. Security, nurses, everyone. She does not come near this room. I know, Adrian said, holding my hand. I already told them. It is just us. Wren Elizabeth Grant was born at 4 a.m. She was 7 pounds, 3 ounces. She had Adrian's nose and my chin. She was perfect. She was a tiny, screaming ball of life that had nothing to do with loans or fraud or revenge. For 12 hours, we were in a bubble. It was just the three of us. It was peaceful. Then, the nurse walked in. She looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Grant, she said, there is a woman in the waiting room. She says she is the grandmother. She has brought a lot of gifts. She is demanding to see the baby. Adrian stood up. He looked at me. I was holding Wren. I looked at my daughter, so small and fragile. I thought about the woman downstairs who had tried to get her mother fired. Handle it, I said to Adrian. Adrian walked out of the room. He was gone for 20 minutes. When he came back, he was shaking. Did she leave? I asked. Security escorted her out, Adrian said. She made a scene. She told the nurses we were keeping her grandchild hostage. She tried to give me a check, $10,000, for a college fund. Did you take it? I tore it up in her face, Adrian said. I told her she could buy a new audience, but she couldn't buy us. We went home 2 days later. We thought we had drawn the line. We thought the hospital scene was the climax. But Lorraine didn't operate on emotional climaxes. She operated on legal ones. A week after we brought Wren home, a courier arrived at our door. He handed me a thick envelope. It wasn't from a bank this time. It was from a law firm. Bradshaw. Sterling Associates. The most expensive litigators in Denver. I opened it at the kitchen table while Wren slept in the bassinet. It was a cease and desist letter and a notice of intent to sue. Lorraine was accusing me of defamation of character, slander, and invasion of privacy. She was claiming that my public reading of the 47 reasons and my accusations of fraud had caused her irreparable reputational harm and emotional distress. She was demanding a public apology, a retraction of all statements made to family members. And this was the kicker: she was petitioning for court-ordered grandparent visitation rights. Citing that my instability made me unfit to be the sole decision-maker regarding the child's social relationships, she wasn't just suing me, she was coming for my child. I read the letter, then I read it again. My suspension at work was still active. My bank account was still recovering. I was exhausted, recovering from birth, bleeding, and hormonal. But as I looked at the legal letterhead, I didn't feel weak. I felt the same cold, crystalline rage I had felt in her living room. She wanted a legal battle. She wanted to use the court system to bully me. She had forgotten who I was. She had forgotten that I investigate fraud for a living. She had forgotten that I had the original loan documents, the IP logs, the witness testimony from the bank, and the recording on Mara's phone. She thought she was suing a tired new mother. She didn't realize she was suing a prosecutor who had just been handed the rest of the evidence. I picked up the phone and called Cal Morrison. Cal, I said. She served us. I figured she would, Cal said. She is cornered. What do you want to do? We can settle. We can agree to a quiet apology to make it go away. I looked at Wren sleeping. I looked at the letter that called me unstable. No settlements, I said. She wants a court case. Let's give her one. But we aren't going to family court. Cal, we are going to criminal court. Savannah, Cal warned. If you pull that trigger, there is no going back. You will put Adrian's mother in prison. She isn't his mother anymore, I said. She is a defendant. I hung up the phone. The baby shower was just the rehearsal. The real show was about to begin, and this time, I wasn't wearing a green dress. I was wearing armor. The hearing at Halcyon Ridge Compliance Group took place 3 weeks after Wren was born. I walked into the conference room wearing a navy blue suit that was a size too big for my postpartum body, but my spine was steel. Across the table sat David, the head of HR and an external ethics auditor. They looked at me with a mixture of pity and suspicion. They had a file in front of them that claimed I was a rogue agent, a woman who used corporate tools to stalk innocent family members. They did not know that I had brought my own file. "Savannah," the auditor began, folding his hands. "The allegations here are serious. The complainant states that you weaponized your access to the database to harass a private citizen, specifically Lorraine Grant, regarding a personal financial dispute. This is a termination-level offense." I placed my hands on the table. I did not shake. "The complainant," I said, my voice steady, "is the subject of an active fraud investigation, and this complaint is not a whistleblowing act. It is the final phase of an extortion attempt." David frowned. "That is a bold claim. Do you have proof?" "I do," I said. I opened my portfolio. I did not start with the IP logs or the bank statements. I started with the video. "This," I said, sliding a tablet across the table, "is a recording taken by Mara Ellison, a registered nurse, at my baby shower on January 20th. I want you to listen to the speech made by Lorraine Grant." I pressed play. Lorraine's voice filled the sterile conference room, sweet and poisonous, announcing her 47 reasons. I let it play until she handed me the envelope. "Now," I said, pausing the video, "I want to draw your attention to a document that Mrs. Grant herself provided to 50 witnesses, a document she claimed to have authored." I pulled out the original 47 reasons list. It was wrinkled now, worn from being read and reread by lawyers, but the text was clear. "Please look at reason number 47, I said. David picked up the paper. He adjusted his glasses. He read it aloud, his voice faltering as he processed the words. "Reason number 47. She is so paranoid about her job security that she will likely be fired for unethical conduct because she does not realize I have filed a test complaint to see if she can handle pressure. If she cannot survive a board inquiry, she is not strong enough to carry the Grant name." The silence in the room was absolute. "She admitted it," the HR director whispered. "She wrote down that she filed a false complaint to test you. She treats people like lab rats," I said. "She thought she was being clever. She thought she was creating a stress test for her daughter-in-law. But what she actually did was document her own malicious intent to interfere with a federal compliance officer's employment." I then laid out the rest: the IP trace from the Garden Club connecting to the ethics portal, the loan document signed with her device ID, the transfer of funds to Juniper Row Holdings. "The query I ran on January 17th was not personal harassment," I stated. "It was due diligence on a shell company that had just received $50,000 of stolen funds under my name. I was not stalking a family member. I was tracking a thief." David looked at the pile of evidence. He looked at me. "We need to verify this fraud. We need a statement from the other party on the account." "He is right outside," I said. I opened the door. Adrian walked in. He looked different than he had a month ago. The softness was gone from his face. He wore his suit like armor. He did not look at David. He looked at me and gave me a small, solid nod. "Mr. Grant," the auditor said, "are you aware of these transactions?" "I am," Adrian said. His voice was deep and clear. "My mother, Lorraine Grant, forged my wife's signature. She opened the line of credit without our consent. She used her access to my personal email to facilitate the theft. My wife is the victim of a financial crime, and she is the only reason my credit score is not currently being dismantled by the authorities." Adrian took a breath. "And the complaint filed against her work, that is retaliation. Plain and simple. My mother is trying to bankrupt us because we set a boundary." David closed the file on his desk. He pushed it away as if it were contaminated. "I think we have heard enough," David said. He looked at me. "Savannah, Your access is restored immediately, and legal will be drafting a cease and desist letter to Mrs. Grant regarding harassment of our employees. I apologize that you had to go through this. We walked out of the building into the bright, cold sunlight. Adrian took my hand. He didn't say anything, but the squeeze of his fingers said everything. He had finally chosen a side, and he had done it in a room full of strangers. The legal hammer dropped 48 hours later. Cal Morrison didn't just send a letter, he sent a package. It contained the fraud affidavit from the bank, the reinstated employment confirmation, the IP logs, and a draft of a criminal complaint ready to be filed with the district attorney. The offer was simple. Lorraine could sign a binding settlement agreement, or she could go to trial. The settlement required full restitution of the $50,000 plus legal fees. It required a formal admission of guilt kept in a sealed file that would be released if she violated the terms, and it required a permanent surrender of any claims to grandparent rights. She held out for 2 days. She tried to call Adrian. He didn't answer. She tried to call Tessa. Tessa sent her a screenshot of the federal sentencing guidelines for wire fraud. On a Tuesday morning, Lorraine requested a meeting. She wanted to meet at a coffee shop on the edge of town. Neutral ground, no home court advantage, no golden hour lighting. I arrived 10 minutes early. I brought Ren in her stroller. I parked the stroller behind my chair, out of immediate sight. Adrian sat next to me. Cal sat across from us. When Lorraine walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. She was wearing a gray sweater and slacks. No pearls. Her hair was pulled back, but it lacked the architectural volume she usually mandated. She looked smaller. She looked like a woman who had spent the last month screaming into a void that refused to answer back. She sat down. She didn't order coffee. She put her hands on the table. They were bare of rings. "I signed the papers," she said. Her voice was raspy. She slid a folder across the table to Cal. Cal opened it, checked the signatures, and nodded to me. "It is done." "So that is it?" Lorraine asked, looking at Adrian. "I sign a check, and I lose my son." "You didn't lose me, Mom," Adrian said. "You pushed me away. You tried to destroy the person I love most in the world. You made a list of 47 reasons why she wasn't good enough, and every single one of them was a projection of your own insecurity." Lorraine looked down at her hands. "I was afraid." It was the first honest thing I had ever heard her say. "Afraid of what?" I asked. "That you would take him," she whispered. "That you were too independent, that you didn't need us. I thought if I could guide you, mold you, make you dependent on the family, then Adrian would never leave. I thought control was the only way to ensure loyalty." "That isn't loyalty, Lorraine," I said. "That is hostage-taking." "I know," she said. A tear leaked out of her eye and tracked through the powder on her cheek. "I know that now. I sat in that big house for 3 weeks, and nobody called. The phone didn't ring, and I realized that I had won every argument for 30 years. And my prize was total isolation." She looked up at me. Her eyes were red. "I am sorry, Savannah," she said. "Not because I got caught, but because I realized that I was the one who wasn't good enough. I was so busy trying to be the matriarch that I forgot how to be a mother." It was a good apology. It was the right apology, but I was not a character in a sitcom. I was a woman who had been dragged through hell. "Thank you for saying that," I said. "I accept your apology." Lorraine's face brightened with a flicker of hope. "Does that mean, can we start over?" "No," I said. The hope vanished. "Apologies fix feelings," I explained gently. "They do not fix trust. Trust is rebuilt in inches, over years. You signed the agreement, Lorraine. That agreement stands. You do not have access to our finances. You do not come to our house unannounced. You do not speak about us to your friends." "But the baby," she pleaded. "Can I just see her, please? I won't touch her. I just want to see her." I looked at Adrian. He nodded. It was up to me. I stood up and turned the stroller around. Ren was awake, her blue eyes looking up at the ceiling fans with mild interest. Lorraine gasped. She put a hand to her mouth. She started to reach out, but then she stopped herself. She remembered the boundary. She kept her hands on her side of the table. "She looks like Adrian," Lorraine whispered. "She does," I said. "But she has my chin, and she will have my spine." I let her look for 1 minute, 60 seconds, then I turned the stroller back around. "We have to go," I said. "When can I see you again?" Lorraine asked, her voice desperate. "We will call you," Adrian said. "In a few months, if you respect the silence, if you respect the distance, if you prove that you can be a grandmother without being a manager." We walked out of the coffee shop. The air was crisp. The mountains in the distance were capped with snow, bright and clean against the blue sky. I looked back through the window. Lorraine was sitting alone at the table, staring at the empty chair where her son used to sit. She had her checkbook, her legal documents, and her pride, but she didn't have us. Adrian took my hand. His grip was warm and solid. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I am," I said. "Are you—" "I feel light," he said. "I feel like I just put down a backpack I have been carrying since I was 6 years old." We walked down the sidewalk, pushing the stroller between us. We weren't a perfect family. We had scars. We had legal fees. We had a lot of healing to do. But for the first time, the narrative belonged to us. Lorraine had written 47 reasons why we should fail. But as I looked at my husband and my daughter, I knew I only needed one reason to succeed. We were free. And the door to our life was not a wall. It was a gate. And for the first time in history, I was the one holding the key. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please drop a comment below, telling me which country or city you are watching from. Let's see how far this story has traveled. Don't forget to subscribe to Juliet Revenge Stories, like the video, and smash that hype button to help this story reach even more people who need a little victory today.